Alright, we're going to take a look at the square roots and do a little drilling here. This is a follow-up to the square roots and introduction lesson that can be found on youtube.com under Big Spring Junior High Math. Alright, what's the square root of 99? Think about it. Well, you already know it should be a little bit less than 10 because 10 times 10 is 100, and the square root of 99? It's a little bit less than 100. It would be 9.9498. Don't expect you to know that, but you should have known that it was a little bit less than 10. What's the square root of 66? You already know that 8 times 8 is 64, so the square root of 66 is just a little bit more than 8. Turns out it's 8.12403. If we were to multiply 8.12403, which is the square root of 66, to 5 decimal places, if we were to multiply that times itself, we don't actually come back up with 66. We come up with 65.9999863. That's because we've shortened the decimals. That's to only 5 decimal places. The square root of 66 is an irrational number and goes on forever and ever. What's the square root of 51? We already know that 7 times 7 is 49, so the square root of 51, it'd be just a bit more than 7. It's actually 7.1414284. If we were to multiply or square 7.1414, we come up with 50.99959. Not exactly 51, so the square root of 51 is an irrational number, and it can't be represented with just a decimal number, so we can only approximate it. What's the square root of 9.1? Well, you already know that 3 times 3 is 9, so the square root of 9.1 would be just a little bit more than 3. It's actually 3.0166206. But if we were to just truncate it, chop it off after the first decimal point, we'd have 3.0 times 3.0, which is only 9, and 9 is not the same thing as 9.1. What if we went to 2 decimal places? 3.01 times 3.01. Well, the answer of that would be 9.0601. That, again, is not 9.1. What if we were to go to 3 decimal places? 3.016 times 3.016. That'd be 9.096256. Still very close to 9.1, but not 9.1. What's the square root of 10? It's a small bit more than 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. What's the square root of 7.5? Well, you know that 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 3 is 9, so the square root of 7.5 is somewhere between 2 and 3. The square root of 7.5, it's a small bit less than 3. It would be 2.7386128. What's the square root of 81? Well, that's 9. 9 times 9 is 81. What's the square root of 125? It'd be a little bit more than 11, because 11 squared is 121. It's 11.18034. What's the square root of 144? Well, that's 12, because 12 times 12 is 144. What's the square root of 1? It's 1. 1 times 1 is 1. What's the square root of 0? It is 0. What's the square root of negative 1? That's tricky. Turns out, mathematicians made up a number for that. They call it I, for the imaginary number. So I times I is negative 1. Real mathematics, it's not just crunching numbers, but it's contemplating them and the mystery of their connections. Your comments, questions, and suggestions are welcome, encouraged, and always appreciated. You may contact me at alanmorris@yahoo.com.